Hey guys, I'm Mason, and this is Wrestling in the Dark, the only professional wrestling podcast brought to you by a blind wrestling fan. WWE Stomping Ground's pay-per-view was last night, and even though in recent months I've been driven away from the main roster product by uninformative and vague commentary, I do still try to keep up with it. I do still watch the main roster pay-per-views to see if they can draw me back in, so stick around to find out what I thought of this as I go through my review. But with that, I do have to say that in my predictions, I was going up head-to-head with my best friend, the filthiest man in the land, Dirty Dan, and I did say that there was only pride on the line, but I might have told one or two little white lies, because I went and I spent thousands and thousands of pounds, and I now currently have here in front of me, I'm holding it, it's really, really heavy and it's beautiful. It's what is going to be the Wrestling in the Dark Predictions Championship. So whoever wins this pay-per-view will be crowned the first ever WITD Predictions Champion. Who will it be? Will it be me? Will it be Dan? Was this pay-per-view any good? Stick around with me as I go through Stomping Grounds and see how it all panned out. I think I was somewhat tricked by this pay-per-view. This opening match was Becky Lynch versus Lacey Evans for the Raw Women's Championship match, and it was probably... No, actually, it was definitely the best match on the card for me. Now, maybe it's opening match bias or something, but maybe it's like that I was ready to watch this pay-per-view. You know, I had a few things on the line, like the Predictions Championship, as well as other Predictions Championships that I go for, like the Going In Raw Discord one. And so I just felt like I'd found a way to go into this enjoying it. And so... because of that, maybe I enjoyed this first match more than I should, but it was the best match on the card for me, and that's probably saying something because it wasn't the most spectacular match. Look, it comes down to this. There's just a lot of problems with the commentary, and I'm going to be getting into it throughout the whole pay-per-view, but this was probably the best match for the commentary. Becky came out, and so did Lacey at the start, and Lacey got some really, really decent heat, and that's probably... it's sort of mixed messages from the crowd, in my opinion, because most people don't want to see a Lacey Evans as champ, but the crowd consistently boos the crap out of her, and the company just isn't going to see that as go away heat or you suck, no matter how much you chant you can't wrestle, etc, etc, during the match, which was one of the chants that broke out during this title match. It never really felt like I was lost with the commentary with this one. There was a few little vague calls, such as Lacey sending Becky face first into the turnbuckle. I don't think that they actually said that it was into the turnbuckle until she tried for it again. The first time it was just like, oh, face first. There was a few things that I liked about this match. One of the spots that I thought was pretty cool was Lacey dragging Becky round by the hair, and I thought that was a really cool spot, showed the disrespect from Lacey Evans, and it got some really, really decent heat from the crowd. The story of the match going through was Becky trying to overcome an early midsection injury after being sent into the barricade, so they were playing up a lot of the core strength of Becky Lynch being affected, and because of that, Lacey Evans was working that midsection quite a bit. There was I didn't make a whole lot of notes for this match, mainly because I don't think that there was a lot of stuff that happened. It really never picked up beyond a certain point for me, but I was enjoying it, and I was actually really enjoying Michael Cole for this match, at least, because I felt like he was actually sort of on his ball. There was quite a few calls of just, you know, like the nitty gritty, just what hand someone's using, going wild for those big exchanges that are like back and forth, etc, etc. But you know, that didn't really last long. I'm not gonna lie. It probably, by the next time he came on, I was already ground down enough to find it sort of annoying. Renee at one point said, oh, and Lacey Evans is now utilising all of the things that she's learned perhaps. And it sounded like she was going to say something else, but I think she might have got cut off. But it just made it sound like she was like, perhaps. It just sort of tickled me. It was one of the first things of the night that I was like, that was really, really stupid, and sort of took away from the match. One of the best little spots really was Becky going for an armbar. They were really playing up that Lacey might tap. Then she got the shoulders down. Lacey kicked out, but Becky transitioned straight back into the disarmer. And not the disarmer, straight back into the armbar that she was going for. The disarmer didn't come until the finish of the match. They were really playing up the fact that, it'll all be over for Lacey if it gets locked in. And it really, really was, because when Becky locked in that disarmer, Lacey instantly tapped. Now, I don't mind that, because that keeps the submission strong, but I really do think that it's time to move on to a different challenger after this. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen that way. It looks, from the events of the show later on, it looks like we might end up getting this match again, and it doesn't. There's no point in it, because this match really, really made Becky look like the strong champion and Lacey like the challenger that just doesn't deserve that championship. Like, Becky beat her clean, fair, and there's just no reason to continue it, in my opinion. Like I said, this match, it wasn't great, it wasn't bad, but the commentary was actually fairly decent, which is sort of it's a good thing on a show full of pretty bad things when it comes to the commentary, because I really, really didn't enjoy most of the other matches on this card, and most of them was for the commentary. I'm sort of sad, really, that there wasn't more to this match, because I'd like to talk about it more, because the rest of the pay-per-view is basically going to be me talking about what I didn't like about the commentary. So I'd like to talk about this more, but there wasn't any really big standout moments other than those ones that that I've already said. It was a solid 4 match that was a decent show opener. I think could have had a little bit more weight to it and had a little bit more happen, considering that it's a women's championship match. But other than that, it was a good way to open up the show, and the commentary didn't do a bad job, and it wasn't a terrible match. So I gave it a 4 out of 6. At this point, both me and Dan were 1 for 1, because we both thought that Becky would retain, and she did, like I said, in a solid 4 out of 6 match. So after that decent opening match, I was in a fairly positive frame of mind, thinking this could end up being a better pay-per-view than I initially thought. And I was looking forward to this next match quite a bit, because I enjoy all of the competitors. So obviously it was Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus The New Day. Now, I really did think that this was going to be one of the best matches of the night, and it almost was. It's so close to being a really good match, but this is the first sort of match where the commentary really started to slip, where I'd been like, oh yeah, Michael Cole's actually doing a decent job, he's actually, calling the moves. There was large portions of this match where they were just talking about Kevin Owens infiltrating the New Day, and little jokes here and there about Sami Zayn and Big E coming back from injury, and etc, even talking about Kofi. There was so much Byron and Graves bickering, and that always really, really grates on me, because it tends to be the focus of the commentary for a good 30-40 seconds, and it just really takes me out of the match, especially when Tom Phillips is trying to call the action and them two are arguing. But it started off really, really hot, this match, and I was like, wow, this is going to be really good, because Owens and Zayn came out really, really strong. They wiped out Big E, and then they isolated Xavier. They both hit super kicks on him. Owens hit a senton, and there was a near fall. Then Sami hit a blue thunderbomb, and Owens hit a splash, and it was still no. And this was like, by this point, I was like, wow, because that all happened really, really quickly. It felt like it had a really frenzied pace. Like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn were a really polished team. Like they had a game plan coming into it, knowing that they couldn't take Big E out, so let's isolate Xavier. And that was a big, big part of the match. And this is where I felt that it started to slip a little bit. Because as they were grinding down Xavier, the commentary were just slowly getting more and more expositional. They were slowly just bickering amongst each other. There was a note about a crossface on Xavier, and then it sort of jumps to the crowd popping for the hot tag. And I really do. I sit and I pay attention and I try to write down every important part of the match. Even if I'm not going to read it out on the podcast, I try and write it down so I can tell you if they were doing their jobs right between the spots. And like I say, it goes from the beginning of the match to the crossface on Xavier to sort of the hot tag portion where Big E was running wild, and it went a little bit. It picked up a little bit from there. Big E really picked up the pace, but there was a lot of stuff that just got confusing after that. There was a point where Xavier hit some sort of big feat of strength, and they were just like, "Oh, Xavier, look at that strength!" And it's like, okay, what's he doing? And there was a really nice point in the match towards the end where Owens and Zayn were isolating one of the New Day again. They hit the Helluva Kick and then the pop-up powerbomb, and then they got the cover. I was about to just call Big E spear then. Big E got the spear through the ropes towards the end of the match, and that sort of took him out. And then Owens hit the stunner on Xavier for the win. I really liked parts of this, and I really do think that if they'd have just cut a couple of minutes out, this is one of those issues with pay-per-views, because it's got to be so long. All of your matches need to be drawn out, and this match would have been a really good 5 to 8 minute match of that initial part where they're isolating Xavier. If that had just carried on with the pace that it was doing, and Owens and Zayn had sort of kept on top of it and really, really kept Xavier down with more actual vicious moves, as opposed to just trying to grind him down. I feel like it would have been a lot better and carried through that with that momentum, because this, instantly started off as like a 4 match that I was like, this could go up to being a 5, but it ended up being like a 3 for me. I actually enjoyed it less than Becky versus Lacey, because the commentary was just so frustrating, and it opened a crack that I think turned into a chasm as I went through this pay-per-view, because I just got more and more despondent with it as we went through. I gotta say, Owens and Zayn winning, it's nice for those two, right? And I really like that they were booked as a proper tag team in this. But my issue is, are they actually going to be transitioned into the tag division? Because if not, you've got the New Day there, who are an actual tag team, who have not been in action for a while. Big E has been out of action for since WrestleMania, and you could do with giving the New Day a little bit of momentum, but you give Owens and Zayn the win, and that's fine if they're going to get transitioned into the tag team division and actually used as a real team. But I just don't think that they will. Like I say, I found it really disappointing with this match, just because I really, really thought that it had the potential, and I have a feeling that if I could see what was going on in the ring, I probably would have enjoyed it, but there was just way too many lackluster calls from the commentary, as well as just infighting, and generally not really adding anything to the match. So yeah, if they'd have made it shorter and got rid of some of the slower parts of the match, and the commentary had actually stayed on point a little bit more, this could have probably been a strong 4, maybe even 5 match, but it ended up being a 3. And at this point, me and Dan were 2 for 2, because we both said Owens and Zayn to win. The United States champion Samoa Joe defended his championship against Ricochet in the next match. I was really looking forward to this one. I am a big fan of Joe. I'm really into Ricochet at the minute. I thought that these two could have a really, really good match, playing off the things that they did end up playing off in this match, with the precision and power of Joe versus the speed of Ricochet. And it should have been, it really, really should have been one of my favourite matches of the night, and instead it just widened the crack that had been opened during the last match, and the commentary just were not interested in calling this match at all. The opening line of this match, or the first significant line that I have written down after the bell went, was Renee going, "Let's not forget about those hands of Ricochet." Like, well done, Renee. Ricochet has hands. Newsflash. It's like, how is he using them? Why should you not forget about them? Yes, I get that he's probably just striking. I want to know what type of strikes. Is it a straight jab? Is it a left hook? Is it an uppercut? What is he doing? Don't just say, "Let's not forget about those hands." Joe was trying to take it to Ricochet hard in the early moments. He came out of the gate strong, and he was going with the powerful offense, and they were both sort of trading strikes back and forth. It was sort of downhill for me from there. There was a few nice calls with Joe, but there was also a few letdown ones with him. There was a bit where they were fighting on the outside, and Joe drove Ricochet's spine into the apron again. You can drive someone's spine into the apron so many different ways, you know. You could do it a backbreaker, you could be doing a suplex, you could be doing a power slam. Let me know what it actually was. Don't just say, "He went spine first." There was like a really, really frustrating bit where, after a lot of Joe trying to slow down that pace, keep Ricochet grounded, Ricochet was turning the tables. He hit, I think, some sort of step-up enziguri, and then he did something else. And Michael Cole was trying to call the spot, but Renee was just shouting over him, like, just too loud to even understand him. And I was like, what is going on? Luckily, they did the replay after that, maybe because they realised that that was the case, and it was Michael Cole saying that he caught Joe right on the ear, and that was fine. But then you get... Again, you get a couple of cool spots with Joe, like going for the full Nelson, hitting a German suplex, and then a clothesline that turned Ricochet upside down, which I was like, okay, that sounds like a decent sell. And then other than that, it was so lackluster in terms of when Ricochet goes to the top rope. That's his wheelhouse. That's what makes him special. And then you just don't call the move. He gets up to the top rope, and then they go, Ricochet launches himself. Joe goes down, and then he gets up on the top rope again. Ricochet flies. Joe taken out. And they just find a million different ways to say they've been taken out, or they've been taken down, or knocked down, knocked out the ring. It's endless and so vague, and it just takes you out of the match. And it's like, yeah, okay, I can imagine it. I can imagine what sort of thing that he's doing. But that's not the point. The commentary is there for people who, aren't paying attention, or for people like me. It should be the case that you should be able to listen to WWE commentary in the car, just like you do with football stuff. And you couldn't, because you'd have no idea what was going on. You'd crash your car in frustration. Yeah, almost dropped an F-bomb then. You'd be in frustration at what was going on, I think. And it's just... one of the other notes was Ricochet hitting a missile dropkick and go for a moonsault, and he hurt the midsection. Then, towards the end of the match, Joe was looking for the the coquina clutch that just would not come out of my throat, and Ricochet was just escaping, getting up to the top rope, trying for something. Joe would try and lock in the clutch again, and eventually he managed to put Joe down and then go for the 630 splash, and he picked up the win. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was marking for this one, because there was only a few matches on this card where me and Dan deviated. So at this point, I was like, yes, I'm one ahead. I'm going to win my own championship that I paid thousands and thousands of pounds for, and I'm just going to hand it to myself. No, yeah, I was sort of marking out because I was like, yes, it actually means something, and I was actually right. It's just a shame that it was such a crap match. And I say that a match is bad, half the time it's really not because of the in-ring competitors. At the end of the day, I can't see what they're doing. Joe and Ricochet could literally just be standing in the middle of the ring, and if they told me that Ricochet just pulled off a double backwards handspring hurricanrana, I'd believe them, and I wouldn't know any different. So it's really not about the actual talent, it's just the commentary, and from a commentary standpoint, this was only a 3 out of 6 match when it should have been at least a strong 4, and I was so disappointed in it, which is a massive shame because it should have been one of my favourite ones of the night. So yeah, Ricochet versus Joe scores a 3 out of 6, and I pull one ahead of Dan in the race for the WITD Predictions Championship. The SmackDown Live Tag Team Championships are on the line next as Bryan and Rowan, the champions, defended against Heavy Machinery. This match, again, was just a complete letdown, and this one was even more frustrating because I love Daniel Bryan, and I think him as a tag in a tag team with Erick Rowan or just Rowan, whatever, is actually really clever booking. I like them as tag champs. I like the gimmick, and the commentary in this match was just, it was atrocious, to be honest. There was so much that went on that they just didn't call, or that they were just ignoring, and it was so frustrating. The earlier moments of the match, Corey and Saxton were just arguing about how much Heavy Machinery like fun and how ugly Otis is, and I just can't stand their arguing. It's so frustrating and grating, and it really takes me out of it, and I just get annoyed at both of them. They both just look so annoying when they're arguing like this. And then, you know, the early moments of the match, Bryan starts hitting the yes kicks, right? Commentary just talking to each other. I don't even remember what they were saying to each other, but the crowd was doing the yes, 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 along with Bryan, and the commentary were just completely ignoring it. I was like, the crowd are doing your job for you, you idiots. It was a really frustrating experience. In fact, the first move that they called in this match was a stalling suplex, and I'm not even sure which member of Heavy Machinery actually performed that move. There was a spot where one of the people from Heavy Machinery was trying something. They were like, look at the power, look at the power, and there was so many different types of things like this. There was minutes and minutes where they didn't call a move, and it was starting to really wear on me. And I hate having to come and record a podcast like this, where I'm just like, this was shit, this was shit, this was shit. But I don't like doing that. I don't want to just rag all over the product. If I had tuned in and this had been, you know, even a 4 level pay-per-view, like a 4 out of 6 pay-per-view, I might have actually given them the dues, you know, and been like, yeah, I definitely want to keep watching now. I might actually watch a Raw or a SmackDown or something. Why would I? Because it's just, you don't give me anything to go off. There was a crossbody by Rowan at one point. The crowd was so behind Daniel Bryan in this, and they were also really bored. I think there was a please recycle chant, and there was all sorts of other ones, a driver Prius, multiple chants of them just not paying attention. So maybe it was actually the match. They really put over Otis as being sort of freakishly strong in this match. At one point, Bryan was hitting the yes kicks, and the crowd were really big into it, but Otis was just firing up. And as Bryan was hitting him with the yes kicks, he was getting more fired up and more fired up. He went for the big one, and then I'm like, okay, a spot's coming, and the commentary goes, oh, and Otis uses his power to slam Bryan, and I was like, And same sort of thing happened with Tucker later on in the match, where he was giving Tucker the S kicks, and then Tucker reversed, and they didn't say anything about that. There was one point where Otis tagged in, Bryan went for him, and they were just like, oh, bouncing off Otis, the raw power of Otis with that one. And just as this happens, I slowly get more and more not invested in the match. My attention wanders. It's so hard to pay attention to a match like this when I really want to know what's going on, but they're just not willing to call the action. Rowan kept sort of trying to get involved, but for some reason he just kept ending up tagging Bryan back in, and that was one of the things that they weren't very good with in this match as well, was like keeping me informed of the tags and who's legal. And went for he took out Rowan by quote unquote sacrificing his own body, and it's like, okay, how, why? If he's just done that, if you want to make the beat, if you want to tell the story that Tucker cares so much about his friend that he's going to sacrifice his body, tell me what the hell he did, because that is an important pivotal point of the match that I should remember going out of it. And it's just slowly wearing me down as I go through the pay-per-view. As I watched it, I was just like, this is getting worse and worse. Is it ever going to pick up? And it's just really frustrating. Every time a SmackDown match came back on, I was like, no, because this Phillips, Saxton, Graves team needs to end. They need to switch it up in the draft, man. Corey needs to just be on one show. I don't care whether they have Percy Watson, Saxton and Phillips. I don't really care. Just get Graves away from Saxton, because their relationship is so grating and toxic and just so annoying that it drags me out of the match. And so it was pretty much, those were sort of the bits that I got from this match. At the end, after Rowan had been taken out, Bryan got the roll-up win, and I do think that this was sort of effective in making Heavy Machinery look a little bit better, but it was just frustrating to me. Otis definitely looks like a monster coming out of this one, which is nice, because we don't get monster faces that much. I could really do without them harping on about his body though, and how ugly he is, because I just don't feel like that's a necessary part of the commentary. I don't need commentators to tell me that someone isn't attractive, because I don't care whether they are or not, if they're a strong in-ring competitor, which Otis clearly is. I'm just slowly getting more and more frustrated with Graves in terms of his commentary style, because there were so many times in this where he was justifying a heel action or talking trash about one of the competitors that I was just like, I don't want to hear what you have to say. And it's just sort of, as I'm going through it, I'm getting frustrated, because I don't want people to switch off, I don't want people to be like, oh, he's just being negative, because I really, really like wrestling. I really like WWE. It's what I've always liked since I started watching wrestling, and I don't want to be just one of those people that's like, oh, I'm done with this. But they just drive me away, and I just getting to the point with it where I can't justify it, and I can't enjoy it either when the commentary is this lackluster. So yeah, this was yet another 3 out of 6 match, and I remained 1 point ahead of Dan, because we both predicted that the champions would retain in this one. Like I said, I thought it was effective for putting over Heavy Machinery and making them look a bit better, but what for? Because are they going to carry on this rivalry? Fair enough if they do, but if they don't, there's no other credible teams for them to face. So yeah, Bryan and Rowan versus Heavy Machinery gets a 3 out of 6. Probably would have been a 4 if the commentary would have been better. The SmackDown Live Women's Championship was on the line next, as Bayley, the champion, defended against Alexa Bliss. And this is just, it's just more of the same. Maybe it's because I'd had those previous 3 matches and they're just starting to wear me down, but by the time this happened, I was like, oh my god, I'm ready for something creative to happen or a good match. You know, at this point, I hadn't realised that the Cruiserweight Championship match was on the pre-show. So I was like, oh my god, I can't wait for the 205 match. Like, please give me a decent wrestling match. And this was just more and more of the same from the commentary. There was arguing between Saxton and Graves about Bayley's motivations and what Alexa's been doing and whether she's telling the truth or whether she's lying, etc., etc. Pay-per-views are not for building story. They're supposed to be the culmination of the story that you've been telling. I just feel like that they just, with WWE sometimes, because they know that they've got another pay-per-view coming up and they've maybe got plans for that next pay-per-view, they just keep the ball rolling. They just keep it going. And this could have been something, you know, it could have gone somewhere, but it was just all completely predictable and the commentary didn't say anything. For anyone who's keeping track, for anyone who knows how far this was into the match, the first significant move that they called was a backbreaker from Bliss, and even that didn't do anything. There wasn't a near fall, it was just a backbreaker. A belly to back suplex from Bayley was also sort of the next one after that. Then later on in the match, Nikki Cross, who hadn't been getting involved, got taken out by Bayley, and I was like, why? I don't get it. Yeah, they're trying to show the aggressiveness of Bayley, but if Nikki Cross had got involved, they hadn't said anything about it so far, so it's just one of those where it made Bayley look like she was just taking out Nikki Cross for no reason. One of the other things that I found quite confusing, really, was the fact that at one point Bayley hit a sunset flip powerbomb into the turnbuckle on Bayley. This one, I was like, man, that should have at least got like a strong 2 count. Like, that's a match-ending move right there, like a sunset flip powerbomb into a turnbuckle. But then later on, as Bayley went to the outside to go deal with Nikki Cross and attack her for whatever reason, Bliss got out. And obviously I realised afterwards, because they said it was to Bayley, she also did a sunset flip powerbomb. And I was like, it's this confusing thing, isn't it? Like, if Balor and Rollins take each other on, there can be like sling blade, and you don't know which one of them has actually performed the sling blade. And at this point, I was like, who exactly did that sunset flip powerbomb? Like I say, they did end up clearing it up, but I just found it confusing that in the same match they both hit the same move, because it just makes them feel like they're not distinguished from each other. It makes them, like I've said in the past, something that makes a good wrestler for me is recognisable movesets. If someone, to do an example that isn't necessarily a good example, but you take Roman, and I know what Reigns is doing, because it's it's a Samoan drop, it's a Superman punch, it's the Razor's Edge, the drive-by. Those are all moves that he does that for the most part other people don't do, that I know what's going on in the match. Whereas then if you've got two competitors doing the same moves and you're just calling them and not doing it in detail enough to tell me which one it is, it just makes it confusing. So the finish of the match saw Bayley going to deal with Nikki. Alexa started attacking her. They got in the ring, and Bliss went for the Twisted Bliss. Bayley got her knees up and hit the Bayley to belly for the win. This one, I think, has to go even lower down. All those other matches were like 3s, and this was worse than that, in my opinion. This was worse because there was nothing. There was no creative direction whatsoever. What is the story coming out of this? Yeah, they're going to go with Nikki costing Alexa the match, which is such a stupid, thin and obvious motivation. There are so many different things that you could have done it coming out of this, like Nikki realising that Alexa's using her and going off on her own, not aligning with Bayley, but just being a woman of her own, or even going with Bliss winning the championship. Yeah, you've only given it to Bayley, but she can get it back. Give Bliss a short reign where Nikki is helping her keep it until you're ready to break them up, and then Bliss can lose the championship because Nikki Cross finally realizes that she's using her, that she's playing mind games with her. Because I actually think that story is actually quite compelling. Someone who's always been friendless and lonely and felt like an outcast, being manipulated by someone that's much more powerful with the mental manipulation, etc., etc. I think that's a fairly compelling story, and I think they could be getting more out of it, as opposed to just going down this is the road that we're going to go down, this is the most obvious path, and that's what we're going to do. There's no risks, there's no, like I said, they're not taking any risks, and they're not stepping out of the comfort zone or trying to go in any sort of direction. And I understand that people feel like they can't go too far with this Bliss and Nikki Cross thing, because people don't want to see stuff about emotional bullying, etc., etc. And I just think that that's sort of BS, because if you can show some of the things that you show in wrestling, like Joe going after AJ's family last year, like Corbin making a joke earlier on in this pay-per-view about Charlie Caruso hanging around outside of his office, saying, oh, if you hang around here much longer, I'll think you're here for more than just a question. If you're going to do those sort of things, then you can do a little bit of an emotional bullying storyline, because those things happen. In today's age, we have social we have social media and online bullying and that sort of thing, and those are stories that you can actually try to tell, and they're just going down the most stock standard one. Like I said, the commentary for this match was poor. I didn't feel like much happened, and they just went down the obvious route, so it was just a 2 out of 6 match, and I'm still one ahead of Dan at this point, because we both predicted Bayley to retain. Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre next in a oh shit, we've booked a match where both men need to win match. I want to find something positive to say. I do. I really want to find something positive to say, but as this was going on, my patience was just getting whittled down. My enjoyment of this pay-per-view was just going down. And then this match, it was just so boring. The fact that Shane is even aligned with Drew is ridiculous anyway. But, Drew shouldn't need to align with anyone. The fact that he's someone's lackey, again, is the most ridiculous thing going. And then this match was just terrible. The commentary were just not doing the jobs, and it makes it so frustrating. Early in the match, Roman sends himself over the top rope, right? They say he launches himself over the top rope. Again, I've brought it up before, but if they're launching themselves over the top rope, tell me what dive they're doing, because that matters. Then he chases Shane around the arena. Why? Leave Shane alone. You don't need to deal with him. Just focus on Drew. It makes Roman look like an idiot, because he should be focused on the big, tough, badass guy that's trying to put him down. He's running round after Shane and eventually gets clocked by Drew. Then Drew is just dominating for minutes and minutes and minutes, and there's just nothing other than commentary about Shane, about Roman, about Drew being aligned with Shane, etc., etc. And just minutes of him just grinding Roman down and quote-unquote punishing Roman. At one point, Renee said, if Roman breaks out of this, what kind of damage has been done to his body already? And I was like, I don't know, Renee. You tell me. That's your job. It's sort of funny to get irate about it, but it really did make me feel this way. In terms of, there was... Roman knocks Drew off his feet. At one point, they were out outside of the ring, and I don't know where exactly they were positioned. I don't know whether they're on the apron or outside, but Michael Cole was like, "Not from here, not from there." Oh, Roman sent through the announce table. What a slam! And it's just this, just constantly. That's what commentary is like for me when I watch a main roster pay-per-view. It's just like, okay, yeah, he slammed him through the table. And then they sort of expand on it and they say he slammed him face first through the table. I know then that Drew does the Alabama Slam, I think, but he does it reverse so that they're going face first instead. I shouldn't have to piece that together. I shouldn't even know that. I only know that because I've been told it by other people, by my sighted friends, people like Dirty Dan, people like the indie correspondent Glenn, like the people from Discord, and I shouldn't have to put that together myself. Just for an example of when a commentary can be good, right? Just take this little 10-second thing where Drew is going... he's winding up for the Claymore, right? So he goes for the Claymore, Roman gets the backslide, and then Drew counters with the Glasgow Kiss headbutt, right? So that little exchange, that's what I want, right? I want to know the action that's going on, even if it is just a backslide, even if it's a right hand to the face, just tell me, because otherwise it's just sort of pointless. Shane getting involved in this match was just utterly frustrating to me, because you booking these two strong competitors that could be, top face and top heel of your company, and you're just booking them into a place where they both need the win, but you're just making both of them look terrible. Because Roman picks up the win in this match, right? But Drew needed it just as much as Roman did. Yeah, okay, Roman took a loss to Shane, but Drew hasn't exactly picked up any big wins. And by getting to this point where you get Roman and he delivers a Superman punch, then he delivers another one, and then he hits a spear, right? He goes for the cover, Shane drags him out of the ring. He then beats up the ref and he hits a coast to coast on Roman, right? And then after that, Drew covers and Roman kicks out, and it's like, so what you're saying is Roman is better than a Drew McIntyre who's had hardly any offense done to him whatsoever, with a Shane McMahon as well, and it's just like, so it makes Roman look stupid because he is, getting beaten up by Shane and actually getting distracted by him and letting Shane get in his head. It makes Drew look stupid because he can't beat Roman even with help from Shane, and it's just so frustrating. In the end, there was just some more Superman punching, and then Roman hit the spear. There was a few decent parts of this match. I think there was like a superplex, I think, from the top rope, or something like that. But those were few and far between. The first significant move they called in this match was a Samoan drop. It's like minutes and minutes of Roman getting worn down by Drew, and then the thing that you use to pick up the pace and turn the momentum is a Samoan drop, and after that it just goes into just standard Roman stuff with the drive-by, and yeah, okay, that does make for recognisable offense, and I do appreciate the fact that those moves are in its moveset because I can recognise them, but this it just was creatively a turd. There was nothing to it, and all it does is serve to continue the storyline so that Roman is going to be locked in this storyline with Shane's stupid little faction just more, because then later on in the night, after Drew's been wandering around backstage getting pissed off, Shane makes a 2-on-1 handicap match between Shane and Drew against Roman on Raw. I just couldn't get behind this at all, really. It was as bad as the Bayley and Bliss one. There was no points of this where I was like, oh, Drew might win, and and even the one point where I thought Roman might lose was when Shane was hitting the coast to coast, and even then, if he'd have won, I'd have still been annoyed because Drew shouldn't need Shane to hit a friggin' coast to coast to beat Roman. Roman isn't that good, guys. He's not like Drew plus Shane, because at the minute you're trying to tell us that Shane is the best in the world, or that he's at least, you've like turned the tables and he's now actually a somewhat decent wrestler or whatever, and you're trying to book him as being like one of the strongest in the company or whatever, and it has no credibility and it doesn't work. And I just, I could have maybe forgiven the creative bankruptcy for this match if it had been that the commentary were doing a decent job, but they just really, really, really didn't. So yeah, Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre gets a 3 out of 6. Press stop on the recording there, but this was the one where I was like, oh, it equals up, but it actually didn't, because Dan actually predicted Roman and I predicted Drew, so I went down a point in this one. Next up was the only match of the night that I thought had any story, any build, and any weight, and I was begging for it to save me after all of this frustration. It's Dolph Ziggler versus Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship, which Kofi holds, in a steel cage match. Now, when I first started watching, right, WrestleMania 28, it's 2012. It's the year that Ziggler wins Money in the Bank. I was a huge Ziggler mark. I used to really, really like it. He was one of those people that I actually appreciated in ring when I could still see, and I was a huge mark for him. These days, not as much because of how much they've driven his character into the ground, but I was excited to see him at a pay-per-view again. Kofi Kingston, again, has always been fairly over with me, especially in the early days of when I started watching. I fell off with him a little bit over the last few years. He's maybe not been my favourite New Day member, etc., etc., but I've never thought that he was bad. And I was really looking forward to this match because I thought, how can they give me a match between Dolph and Kofi, two of the competitors that I actually enjoy, and give me a steel cage match between them and not enjoy it? And the answer is by booking this match, because there was, you know what, they didn't really call any significant moves in this match for a long time, if at all. It was just all about the escape. That's what it was about. There was a lot of face first into the steel goes Kofi Kingston, that sort of thing. But other than that, there was not much that even got said. I started counting at the beginning of the match to see how quick it would be before there was like a significant move. I only had to count 34 seconds before Kofi went for a Trouble in Paradise. After that, Dolph tried to escape, Kofi pulled him back in, and then after that it was just a lot of back and forth with trying to escape the cage. At one point though, Kofi did something and Renee was like, oh, that's the story of this match, that it's two competitors that know each other so well. And I was like, how? Like, how are you showing me this? You can't just say this is the story. You've got to show me. Take an example, right? Seth Rollins taking on Finn Balor earlier this year. Okay, he hits that superplex from the top rope, which he always follows up with the Falcon Arrow. Except that one time he didn't follow it up with the Falcon Arrow because he knew that Finn Balor had reversed that move before, so he changed it up. We didn't get anything like that. There was no like Kofi trying to hit like trademark offense that Dolph then went and reversed, and it was really, really frustrating to me. There was so many just missed opportunities in this whole pay-per-view, to be honest, in terms of the commentary. I'm struggling to think of something sort of positive with this one. There was a bit where Dolph was looking for the Fameasser and they were like, Dolph, looking for the Fameasser? Oh, no, Kofi into the cover. And I was like, okay, what actually happened there? Like, yeah, okay, I assume he sent him into the steel, that sort of thing. And then the one thing that was frustrating me throughout this match was the magic door. Towards the beginning of the match, Dolph hit a drop kick, and then he demands for the door to be opened. I was like, why are you doing that? And it was literally just to set up the fact that they were both going to try escaping through the door throughout the match, because that was more or less the way that they both tried to escape each time. There was like going over the top of the cage was only really teased like once or twice. So more or less, other than that, it was all door teases. But it was just magically opened whenever they wanted it to be. Like I assumed that you have to ask for the refs to open the door, right? That once you've like missed your opportunity, it gets locked back up. Well, at one point, the commentary have been putting over the fact that Dolph got Xavier with that super kick that everyone's been putting over on SmackDown, and he hits the super kick on Kofi, and then Kofi falls back and almost falls out of the open door. And I'm like, sorry about that. I'm like, why is the door open? Like, who called for it to be opened? Then there was a part where Kofi was going for the door. He was in a leg submission, I think, like maybe like an ankle lock or something. He's going for the door. He's dragging his way over, and he was being dangled out of the door by Ziggler by the leg, which is a spot that they seem to have started liking doing. I can't recall the exact example, but I'm pretty sure there's been another like cage match recently where someone was like dangling out by their legs. Kofi was in that submission for a really, really long time, and then at one point he tries to rally a little bit. Dolph looks for the super kick. Kofi gets the ankle lock. I was like, okay, that's nice. Reversing, like, it makes sense basically. After you've been in the submission, get your own submission. So he's got the ankle lock, and Dolph is backing up towards the door. I'm like, okay, what's going to happen here? And then the next thing, the commentary's like, oh, he's got both legs dangling out the door. They're dangling out. I'm like, but how is that possible then? Either Kofi's transitioned into another move and you haven't told me, or Kofi somehow has an ankle lock on whilst Dolph has like both of his legs out the door, and I just don't understand how that happened. The same similar sort of thing happened where they were fighting up on top of the cage. Dolph got both of his legs out. Kofi pulled one in, and they were fighting on top of the cage. And then the next thing, the commentary was like, oh, and both men collapsing to the ground from that headbutt. And it was like, who did the headbutt and what happened? But yeah, that submission that Ziggler locked in was because Kofi went for the trouble in Paradise, but tweaked his leg. And then towards the end of the match, Dolph was going for the door again. Kofi leapt over him and got the win. I just don't think that there was anything like really, really special about this. I didn't feel like the commentary added any drama to it. I didn't feel like there was anything special or groundbreaking. I couldn't tell you, like, go and watch this match, because I couldn't tell you one decent move that happened. Like, other than spots, like, I can tell you the spots. I can tell you, this guy tried to escape the cage at this point. This guy tried to escape through the door this way, and that sort of thing. I can tell you the spots, but I can't tell you any impactful, significant moves. The only one really that they tried to call was that Fameasser, and even that was attached to a reversal, and not even telling you what happened. So it's just really, really frustrating. This whole pay-per-view was really, really frustrating. So yeah, I gave this another, the only other match on the card that ended up being a 4 out of 6, and that's only really because the actual spots weren't too bad. So even though the commentary let them down, it wasn't that bad. So I gave it a low, begrudging 4 out of 6. Seth Rollins, the Universal Champion, defended against Baron Corbin in the main event of this pay-per-view in a special guest referee match. Now, I was like, all through the week, I was like, who's it going to be? Who's the ref going to be? Is it going to be Brock? Is it going to be Heyman? Is it going to be Corbin himself? Is it going to be Shelton Benjamin, which was my fantasy booking prediction? But it ended up being somewhat more clever than that. Now, I wasn't expecting it, but Corbin comes out. He has his little BS introduction that he gets the announcers to do. Then he goes to announce who the ref is, and Seth interrupts him with like the most lame interruption, just like, "Come on, I've had enough. Let's just get to it." And it's like, yeah, Corbin was trying to get to it until you like interrupted him, and then he announces that the special guest ref is Lacey Evans. Now, I actually sort of popped for this. Now, I'm not sure whether I popped because it wasn't Paul Heyman, which is what I was expecting, or whether it was actually a decent choice. Because it was a somewhat decent choice, if not a little bit advertised. And I will admit that it wasn't like overly advertised, but the fact that they mentioned the fact that Becky was Seth's girlfriend earlier on in the show, like right after Becky won, they were like, "Oh, can Seth, Becky's boyfriend, be successful later on?" And I should have realised then that Becky was getting involved somehow, and I sort of did. I was like, okay, so she's getting involved. I didn't actually even consider that it could be Lacey Evans, and I don't think that that's actually a bad choice. They obviously want Seth and Becky to be able to work together a little bit. This will most likely lead to some sort of mixed gender tag match or something like that, and that could at least be cool. Becky and Seth getting to play off each other and actually work together a little bit might actually be pretty cool. So I did actually feel somewhat positive about this match going in. I was like, okay, it doesn't seem like we're going to get any Brock shenanigans, so I'm okay with that. But by the end of this match, I was actually somewhat frustrated that Lesnar didn't come and cash in, because it's like, what better chance is Lesnar ever going to have to come and cash in than literally having the crap beaten out of him in a biased referee match? This started off with Corbin taking it to Seth with a chair before the bell rang. Then Lacey called for the bell. Corbin was beating Rollins up on the outside, sending him into the barricade, etc. And then there was a long period where the commentary just said nothing. They just said nothing. They talked, they spoke to each other, but they didn't say anything significant when it came to the match or any of the moves, etc., etc. In fact, for the next 4, 5, 6 lines of my notes after the start of the match, it's all just about what the crowd's chanting, because there was a Daniel Bryan chant. I was like, God, a bored crowd chanting Daniel Bryan during the main event? Is this 2014? And then we got CM Punk chants, we got boring chants, we got bullshit chants, we got NXT chants. There was so many different things that the crowd were just chanting because they were utterly bored, and I couldn't blame them in the beginning of this match. At one point, Renee said, I can't... one second, sorry, there was just a little bit of a distraction. At one point, Renee said, "I don't know, I'm just a viewer of the product." And I was like, Renee, if you're a viewer of the product, why do you not understand that I need commentary? It was just really frustrating. In the end, not in the end, but like towards the point in the match where it picked up a bit, Seth managed to turn the tide, and that was like the first significant move that they actually called, was Seth doing the step up enziguri to turn the tide. After that, it was all just sort of obligatory Seth Rollins stuff, the suicide dive, etc., the Falcon Arrow, but it was just constantly getting thwarted because Lacey made it a no count out match because he put Baron through the announce table. Corbin was taking it to Seth with a chair, so she made it a no disqualification match. It hit the Falcon Arrow. Cole counted to 7, but she wasn't paying attention. It was just all that sort of stuff, like typical special referee, biased referee type stuff. one of the really cool parts, I thought, was that at one point Lacey slapped Seth, and Seth got really fired up at her. It actually seemed like he wanted to fight her. Like, it was like, come on, is that all you've got? And then she slapped him again, and that was when Becky came running down. And it did make me laugh that they were going for this angle of, like, Becky coming and running down, because, like, the slap that Lacey gave Rollins was like the bit that pushed her over the edge. It's like, what? Him getting royally screwed by Lacey in terms of, like, slow counts, fast counts, not counting. All those things didn't tip you over the edge, but the slap, that brought her down to the, don't you slap my man. And it just, that entertained me. But after that, it really turned around pretty quick. Becky came down, she made the save, then the officials came down, John Combe took over the refereeing, and Seth hit the stomp. I really felt like the last 5 minutes of this match were fairly interesting. The commentary picked up a little bit better, there was a few decent spots, and at least the story of this match saved it a little bit in terms of Seth getting screwed, but the commentary was still really, really lacking and not good at all. But luckily, I was so relieved that the pay-per-view was almost over that I was sort of just like, okay, let's just enjoy this last match and try and get through it. Like I said, the fact that it seems like it'd lead to this mixed gender tag match type deal, I find that quite exciting to see Seth and Becky getting a chance to work together. Lacey and Corbin should be a decent pairing. I just, more than anything, I really, really wish that the commentary hadn't let the match down so much in those early moments, because it felt like it was so long before Seth turned it around and made it a little bit more interesting. But again, I just couldn't get into it, and there were so many different things that annoyed me that I gave it a 3 out of 6. And with that, we've got to the end of my predictions. It was a really, really unpleasant show for me. And I really didn't like coming and doing this podcast either and having to be so negative about it. Because anyone who knows me knows that I try to stay positive when it comes to WWE, when it comes to wrestling. I try to defend them as much as I can, but with a pay-per-view like this, there was so many issues with the commentary that it just really hammers home the point of why I've stopped watching the main roster product. It definitely didn't serve to draw me back in. The one issue that we haven't dealt with is that WITD Predictions Championship. Now, during the pay-per-view, was getting really excited because after Roman won, I was like, yes, that's it, we've evened the score, and I was looking forward to the Cruiserweight match, and then they ran the package showing that the Cruiserweight match had been on the pre-show, and I was like, no, and then Drew Gulak picked up the win for that, which means that Dan, the filthiest man in the land, wins the WITD Predictions Championship from the pre-show match. Hope you're proud of that, Dan. It didn't rest on the main event, didn't rest on a title match. It was all decided by the pre-show match. I guess that it had all been decided before I started watching, but I don't watch the kickoff matches. So yeah, it was all decided by a kickoff match. I hope that you're happy, but congratulations, you win the WITD Predictions Championship. You don't get a belt, but I promise you, it is here, it does exist, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's made out of solid silver. It cost me so much, and it's really, really heavy. But trust me, it definitely really exists. If you want to challenge for the Wrestling in the Dark Predictions Champion, when I post my Fighter Fest predictions video, just comment down below saying I want to be champion, and the first person who leaves that comment will challenge me and Dan in a triple threat for Fighter Fest. If you want to see what happens with that, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notify bell, and you'll be notified when I put up my Fighter Fest predictions and any of the other videos that I do in future. I hope you've liked this, guys. I hope it wasn't too negative, and I promise that I will try and make my next video a little bit more positive, but unfortunately the commentary really let me down with this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comment down below on what you thought Stomping Grounds was like, how you found it, what would you rate it. All in all, I give this a 3 out of 6 for the pay-per-view. Right guys, I'm off, and you should have a good one.